Hi everybody, this is a meditation tutorial video for those of us who experience or have experienced anxiety in our lives. So whether you're somebody that experiences anxiety occasionally from time to time, or somebody who experiences anxiety more acutely and chronically, this is a meditation practice that is not necessarily therapeutic in any way, but is designed to support bringing anxiety to your awareness and loving attention, and to support you in healthy living practices. So, I also want to add that from a personal note, I am indeed somebody who has experienced a great deal of anxiety, and I know how visceral and physical and humbling it can be. So, if you are somebody who experiences anxiety, please know that from the bottom of my heart, without a shadow of a doubt, I already know that you have a tremendous amount of resilience and courage, because that is indeed what it takes sometimes to be with anxiety. So, that being said, I do want to say a few things about anxiety generally, and then would go about outlining a practice that hopefully you can do from time to time, either in times that you don't feel anxiety or times when you feel like you're in the middle of the storm. So, oftentimes, there's a temptation for something uncomfortable like anxiety to want to use meditation to eviscerate it or somehow reject it or get rid of it. But actually, the invitation here is to kind of cultivate the opposite. Here, we're looking at meditation as an opportunity to really look at our experience, to see what's going on. And as somebody who used to have panic attacks and who uh, brought the microscope of awareness to my anxiety, I was very, very surprised at what I discovered. So I had been scared of my own anxiety, and so it sort of built on itself. I saw it as this singular behemoth thing, and that when the physical sensations of anxiety arose, or when I felt anxiety had come for a visit, I felt a tremendous amount of intimidation, seeing it as this singular thing that had come to be somehow. But when I actually looked at my experience, when I really took the time to say to myself on the meditation cushion, okay, so what is this anxiety experience that I'm so terrified of? What I discovered is that it's actually got a lot of parts and moving parts. And though they're too innumerable to mention on one slide, I kind of categorize them in three main chunks. So I noticed, for example, that I had a lot of thoughts and beliefs. These might be thoughts about a certain situation or something that's just very general, like, oh, this is no good, or this situation is bad, or I'm not okay, or oh no, anxiety is here, what am I going to do? Thoughts like this would be present when I was experiencing the very difficult experience that collectively we call anxiety. I would also sometimes experience images, I noticed, kind of visions of me, my future self, somehow not being all right or not being safe, or um, being in a situation I couldn't get out of. And these flashed very quickly in my mind's eye. I also became aware when I looked at my own anxiety of feelings. So this was everything from physical sensations to energetic movements in the body to emotions that arise, coalesced, merge with physical sensations, dissipated, all of it. So all in all, this thing that I was calling anxiety, I saw had so many moving parts. But what happened when I saw that it was not singular, but in fact pervasive, is that I started to see the space that existed between all these phenomena. And then suddenly, over time, with a lot of practice, it became something workable. And so I hope this practice might be of benefit to you. The first thing, if you were doing a practice that is really intending to bring anxiety to the microscope of your awareness, the first step is to have the proper motivation to really say to oneself, I'm endeavoring to look at my anxiety, not to get rid of it, but to truly cultivate a sense of understanding and kindness towards it, and self-compassion, because to reject our experience of anxiety is to somewhat be at war with ourselves. So we can have a kind of courage, in fact, and arouse that courage at the beginning of our practice by saying, anxiety, I'm choosing to look at you today because I no longer want to be at war with you, and I hope to bring loving attention to the experience of you. So that might be a lovely motivation that you can rouse and sort of be with, sit with the body that experiences that. So that would be the first step of your practice. And then you'd want to decide on a base camp practice. So it can be very hard to look at anxiety directly. It's sort of like looking at the sun or putting your hand on a hot plate, because it's a very visceral experience for some of us. And so as a start, we're not going to look at it directly right away. Instead, what we're going to do is choose an object of meditation. That could be sounds, it could be looking at a flower or a candle, and bringing our attention to that object again and again. So we might get distracted, and then we'll bring our attention back to the object. I use the examples of a flower or a candle or sounds because all of those are experiences that we tend to, in our dualistic thinking, think of as outside the body. And sometimes that's helpful as a base camp practice. So much of anxiety really is in the physical sensations of the body. And so when we choose a practice that is meant to calm the mind, that is meant to be a safe place before we really look at the heart of anxiety, it might be helpful to choose something that's outside of the physical body. So just try that for a minute right now. Maybe motivate to look at your experience right now in an effort to be compassionate to yourself, and look straight ahead or have your eyes closed and just listen to the sounds in the room. Good. Now just bring your attention to any sounds outside the room. And when you get distracted, bring your attention back to sounds. Great. So that would be an example of a base camp practice. So in this meditation on anxiety, you would actually start with that, something that feels safe and soothing, and something that you can return to throughout the practice if things get a little too wild. So once you have that base camp practice and you practice it for maybe 2 or 3 minutes, even 5 minutes if you like, then's the time to really look at the anxiety that's maybe present in your experience. So as I said, anxiety sometimes has many, many moving parts. And so after you do your base camp practice, you'll then switch your attention to just cycling through some of those parts. You'll check in with your thoughts. What kind of thoughts are you having, or beliefs about the situation at hand? Just see if you can watch those for a moment and let them be there. See if there are any images flashing in your mind's eye, things that you weren't really conscious of that were flashing before you, but bringing your loving attention to it, you suddenly begin to notice. And see if there are also any feelings. So this could be physical sensations, twitches. Oftentimes there's a rapid heartbeat, closing of the throat with anxiety, kind of a jitteriness, or you might feel a lot of energy in the neck and head as energy rises during experiences of anxiety. So rather than trying to manipulate any of that, just see if you can name to yourself all the moving parts you observe. And if you're not experiencing anxiety in the moment that you're practicing this, it's still really good practice to oscillate from the base camp practice to checking in with thoughts, images, and feelings. Because that way, what happens is that when you are experiencing anxiety on the cushion, you'll be able to have the fluidity of movement of the form of meditation to be able to examine it more seamlessly. So after you do that, you'll just return back to your base camp practice, checking back in and resting the mind on sounds, resting the mind on the visual object maybe you chose, whatever you chose for your base camp practice. After you cycle in through observing thoughts, beliefs, images, and feelings, you'll just return to resting your attention as a resting practice back on whatever object you chose. And then you'll repeat and go back to cycling through and then back to your base camp practice. And as you practice this with more regularity and frequency, you might spend less time at the base camp practice and more time in the eye of the storm of anxiety, just sitting and noticing all its moving parts. You can even label them to yourself. And then if it ever gets too much, you know that that base camp practice is there that you can return to. Sounds are outside the body, the mind can rest its attention there, no problem. So after you're done with that maneuver of form, going back and forth of checking in with your experience, whether it's resting or examining anxiety, and you're done with your practice, be sure to take the time to dedicate the benefits of your practice. When I was practicing with my own anxiety, I'd often, in particular, dedicate my practice to all those beings, human or non, who experience anxiety in all its manifestations and all its forms, as a sense of love and solidarity and knowing that I'm not doing this alone. So very, very important to dedicate that, your practice, the benefits of your practice, so that you can have also a positive association with this practice, that it is transforming and softening the heart to be more loving and gives you a reason to look at anxiety again in the future. So what does this practice teach us? My own experience, and you'll just have to find out for yourself, but my own experience is that slowly, I don't know how, but I started to become so intimately familiar with all the various manifestations of anxiety in my body and mind, that they started to no longer frighten me. And though I am still, to be true, have moments of anxiety from time to time, they tend to be much shorter because as soon as I put my attention on them, I remember their quality and what they're like, having spent so much time with them, and slowly they sort of dissipate on their own. So it is a practice that I am doing alongside of you, and there's no way to guarantee any results. But if anything else, it also made me more sensitive and loving to people who do experience anxiety, understanding that it is a very challenging physical experience to be with. So I hope that this practice and this meditation tutorial is helpful to you. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below. And also, I invite you to check out my website, lotuswellbeing.com, with a dash between the well and the being. Lots of blog materials there, and also details about the kinds of services I offer to individuals who are looking for counseling, spiritual counseling or otherwise, and group trainings to folks who are looking to bring more awareness to the workplace. All right, namaste, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Take care.